Here's a screen recording of one of the two cabinets I bought at auction. As you can see by the dated decor in the basement, they've been around for a long time. What attracted me to these pieces was their simplicity of design. After all, it's just a box with four legs. I did a bit of research and found out they were referred to as servers and used in the 60s in smaller dining rooms that didn't have enough room for the more popular, larger sideboards or buffets. This particular pair was manufactured by a company from Canada called Dealcraft. I refinished the matching folding dining table, I think about 2 videos ago. I'll put the link in the description if you're interested in viewing it. The cabinets are not in really bad shape. There's a few of the usual chunks missing here and there, some gouges and scrapes, and two really nasty burn marks on the top. And of course, it's very dirty. I'm hoping that the brass knobs here are brass. They look brass, they just look really tarnished, so we'll see a little later on if they clean up nicely. I apologize for the furniture being upside down in this segment, but when I was filming this, I still had limited mobility in my injured right wrist, and I had no one around to help me flip them, so upside down filming it was. Here's the top of one of the cabinets. It looks like there's some sort of burn mark in the corner. The funny thing is, it doesn't smell like cigarette smoke, so I'm not sure where the burn marks are coming from. Both these servers are definitely in need of a redo. So follow along and let's get started. I know I'm going to go against the grain, so to speak, of the furniture finishing world, but I sometimes don't wash my pieces. Sometimes I go straight into the stripping, scraping, and sanding. But this piece was quite dirty, so I used Dawn dish soap to give it a good clean before the next steps. And this is why you take off hinges when you're refinishing, because you don't want to refinish a piece and leave that on the piece. That would just look very bad. Yeah, these hinges have seen better days. I do like these knobs. They're very simple. So this is cabinet 34. So when I take off the doors underneath the hinges, I've just put 34 right side. That way I don't get confused. And believe me, I sometimes get confused. Whoops. I was scraping the edge banding on the front of one of the cabinets, and I knew this, that the edge banding had bubbled right here. But as I was coming down with the scraper, I forgot. And of course the scraper caught it and just, destroyed the edge banding. But I have all the pieces, so I just have to figure out which piece goes where, and I will glue it all back.
A little later on in the video, you'll see me use wood filler to fill in the remaining little cracks that you see here.
This is me trying to take the legs off the bottom of the server. I often remove the legs because it just makes it easier to refinish. But as you will see, it was glued on pretty good. So after trying to get it off, I just abandoned the idea and just sanded everything down as is.
There's a little bit of green corrosion happening on some of the brass feet, so I just took some fine sandpaper and sanded it off, and it looked good as new after I'd finished. I'm working on the top of one of the servers here, and I've gone over it already once with 150 grit, and now I'm moving on to 220. Most of the remaining marks will disappear. The burn mark at the front, luckily, isn't too deep, so with a bit of careful hand sanding, I get most of it off.
Sometimes you start with one technique. For instance, here I am using my small scraper to take the finish off one of the drawers. I realized that it's not working terribly well. It's not taking very much off. So I moved to my larger scraper, which you will see here. And the larger scraper does, take more off, so it's a bit more efficient. But I work on it for a little while longer and realize that, hey, maybe scraping isn't the best way to take the finish off the drawers. As I move to sanding, it seems to be a much more efficient way of taking off the finish. It's just working a little better. I just wanted to point out along the edge here how you can see the scraper marks from my small scraper. They will eventually come out as I move through the different grits of sanding. I started off with 150 and then moved up to 220, and with a little bit of hand sanding along the edge, they came out very well. This is where I make the wrong decision. I take some Goudy stain in the color Pecan, which is a brown color, and I decided to use this color because I thought it would tone down a little bit of the red in the mahogany. When I put it on the doors, it looked okay, but as it dried, I noticed that the red in the mahogany was kind of peeking through some of the brown parts, and it just looked very blotchy and did not look good at all. And of course, this was after I had stained all the doors. So I sat on it overnight, came out in the morning, looked at it again, decided I could not live with the way it looked. So I removed the stain by sanding, and I started from scratch with a new color, which was my old standby General Finishes nutmeg, because that has a very warm reddish hue to it anyways, undertone, so it would go better with mahogany. I'm using a sanding sealer mixed with 50/50 denatured alcohol, and I'm spraying inside and out of both servers. I've added a bit of bluish green tint to the mixture to hopefully bring down a little bit of the reddish tones. The sanding sealer will act as a good base layer for the next layer, which I will put on, which will be a water-based lacquer. I am attempting to blend some of the small wood filler patches that I repaired. I'm using a combination of the color Perfect Brown and Burnt Sienna in Mohawk's Blendall powders, and I'm mixing them in with a couple sprays of Mohawk sanding sealers. I mix it up and then I paint it on to the part that needs coloring, and I just keep adjusting the color and adding the color until I get something that I'm happy with. The hinges weren't coming clean with Barkeeper's Friend, so I figured out that the hinges were covered in a coating of lacquer. So I'm using lacquer thinner here to soak the hinges in to get rid of all the lacquer on them. And I think the reason why they had so much lacquer on it is the doors were probably sprayed when the hinges and the doors were attached to the cabinet, so that's why they got lacquer all over them. And I just couldn't clean them up without removing it. I chose not to paint the hinges and knobs, even though they had their fair share of age spots. Sometimes I just don't like the look of the shiny new hardware on older pieces, and I made the decision that this was one of those pieces. Once again, we have come to the best part of the past 25 minutes, the reveal. But just before we get there, let's take a quick look back at what we started with. And most of all, enjoy the outcome of all my scraping, sanding, and spraying. And I will catch you next time. Bye.